So we are continuing now on Eruvin Peichet Amud Aleph. We had been just we spoke about the last time we left off on was the unique case of Tveria and certain kulas that they had that other people wouldn't necessarily use. And then but the general discussion we're talking about is how do we bring water out from, how do we draw water was our basic question. Right, so the question is, what's the way you do so, and when is it mutar, when is it asur, and what sort of structure must you construct on your balcony or your window in order to allow you to draw water from the river by your house, or from the body of water, or whatever body of water happens to be flowing on by. The question is, how can you access it? So, Amarabba Barahuna lo shanu ella lemalot avalish boch asur. So again, we are on Peichet a couple lines down. Amar Rabba Barahuna. So when they are talking about the whole making the shaft, having walls around your balcony, not having walls around your balcony, that whole story is only allowing you to draw water. But if you want to pour water off the side, it's forbidden. Makifla Rav Shizbi. So Shizbi asks, Ma ben zeh. Sorry, Mechima ben zeluka. So what's the difference between spilling extra water out versus the case of a trash heap? Do we have a picture here? 104. Okay. Where's the picture? Okay, I don't see a good picture. Oh, here we go. Okay, so basically, this is what they used to have: a common sewer or a latrine in the courtyards that people used to spill stuff into. So again, normally, but I mean, in the courtyard, it's not in the courtyard. It would be like in a courtyard you wouldn't really have access to. So here, let me share the screen just so we see some examples of what type of pit it could be. The answer, they used to have these places for sewage in ancient Rome. I'll see if I can, if we have time at the end, I'll see if I can pull up some pictures of what that was. But basically, they used to have places to throw the sewage. So again, they're throwing the sewage isn't the same as spilling extra water back in. So we allow it. So then the question is, what's the difference? So the answer is that hani taimi, the hani low taimi. So the difference is that the water that you're spilling into the sewer, not quite sewer, like the pit, will not necessarily end up flowing far away. But these will not end up being absorbed, and therefore the issue will end up being that the water will then leave the Zichron, or will end up leaving your permitted area, right? When you assuming that your drains aren't, amazing and perfect, a lot of times the water kind of sits there and doesn't really go anywhere for a while. So therefore, for all you know, it's going to sit there and it won't, get going anytime soon. So therefore, it would be a problem for your local sewer. But in terms of if you're throwing it out your window into the river going right on by, it is most definitely going to be leaving the reshut it's currently in, and that would be a problem. So okay, now there's another version of this that would be of this story. So let's read this other version. So Emar Rabba Barav Huna lo temal malod hu deshari lishboch asur el lishboch nami shari. So actually, Rabba Barav Huna said that you don't need to be worried about the fact that to draw is. Don't say that you can draw water, but you can't spill out water. Rather, even to spill out water is mutar. Amar Shizbi, Pshita, Hainuuka. Of course, you're allowed to spill out water, out of your house, just like you have when you have the sewer running through your backyard, through your courtyard. Same thing. So Mahu Tema Hani Taime, Hani Lo Taime, Kamash Valad. No, right? So then you may have thought that you wouldn't compare the two of them, because the water poured into the one in the sewer is likely to be absorbed and not necessarily leave, Whereas the water past the balcony, they will not be absorbed, and therefore that would be a problem. Kamashmalan, that we're not worried either way of the water flowing out, as long as you, in either one of these cases, as long as when you spilled it down, it was mutar. What happens afterwards, we're not really worried about. Right. So this is also relevant. Let's say in general, Shabbos is spilling out of water. Are you worried? Like when let's say if you're, because technically, whenever you flush the toilet or use water in the sink, eventually your water will, again, it might take a really long time, but eventually it will end up leaving, the reshut that you're currently in. Also might end up even, potentially, watering the grass somewhere, depending on where the pipe, where the final pipe leads out, depending on where you are. So the answer is like that is that we're not concerned once it's too far removed. And this is saying that in this case, that the limitation we have here for for being curious if the water is going outside of your rishos, as long as where you directly poured it into is fine. What happens afterwards, we're not worried about. Okay, so now back to we had a back to mention earlier. Right, this is when we had two balconies. Let's go back up to show the picture. When we had two balconies, one on top of the other one. So that was, let's go further up. Here we go. We had the two balconies on top of each other. Sorry, just scrolling back on up so we can. Where was that picture? Okay. Well, okay. There's two balconies, each of different heights, and you're throwing it over to access the other one. I guess the photo is farther back there, and I just don't see it. Okay.
I thought you passed it. I thought you passed it already.
I did. Was it this one? Oh yeah, this one. Yeah. This one.
No. No. One more. There. No.
This one. Okay.
I thought there was another one.
That's fine.
Okay.
Either way, we have a two balcony case. So we'll see which parts we're quoting from there. So Amarav Huna Amarav Lo Shanu El Bismucha Vabu Fleget El Yona Muteret. So when do we say that they connect? Only when they are nearby to each other. We get the two balconies, but when they're far apart, they don't connect. The Rav Latame and Rav follows his opinion. The Amar Ein Adam Oser Achavero Derech Avir. Because Rav says you generally don't answer things by way of. Okay, I think it's even farther back than that. Well, that was probably wrong direction, right? So they should hit okay, I think we're gonna need to focus. So sorry, while I scoot on back a little bit. Here we go. This one over here. Okay. So again, so when do we say this is the case? Only when they're reasonably close together, but when they're far away, we're not worried about it. So, all right, the question is, can you, again, and we had this discussion, I guess on Sunday, about the fact that, about your usage of the air rights, and that's what the point was, is can you or can't you take control from somebody else via air rights? So Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Chia, Rav Yosef, Amar Rabbi Oshia, Yesh Gezel b'Shabbat. The Churba Machzir L'Ba'alim. So what's this talking about? So this is the question of, can you gain ownership of an area on Shabbat? So Rabba said then Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yosef said then Rabbi Yoshia that you can actually steal a rishus on Shabbos, right? So meaning if you were to use the air rights, in theory you could take control of it over it and make it successful for other people. And similarly, if you for something that's ruined, it ends up being returned to its actual owners. So, okay, so Hagufa Kasha, that whole statement that Beit was quoted just everything's contradicting itself. Like, I don't understand what's going on here. So Amarta Yesh Gazel b'Shabbat Amakan. You said that you can steal on Shabbos, which means that the kinyan is valid, and therefore you have full control over it now. B'churba Machzir L'Ba'alim Al Malokai. On the other hand, you said that a ruin returns to its owner, which implies that you didn't actually acquire it when you squatted at the abandoned building. So which one is it? Did you acquire it or didn't you acquire it? So Hazakamar. So let's phrase this differently. What's the question? Yesh din gezel b'Shabbat. No, what they mean to say is that there is such thing as stealing on Shabbos, and how does that apply? The churba machzir l'ba'alim, that a ruin has to be returned to its owners. So, meaning that it's not saying that you can steal it. It's saying that you should have, that you have to return it. That you don't actually get a full kinyan at this point. You know, when you say when you steal something, we say you don't. It's not fully yours unless the other person fully gave up on the item. And for things that are movable, things that are movable, you need to have a chazaka. And so, simply the issue here is that it's not. You're not yet at the stage where you can have a chazaka, and therefore you haven't properly stolen it, even if you tried to, and it still belongs to that person, and therefore you don't have a kinyan. So Amar Rabba, to do. So Rabba says we actually have another problem with this. That right? Again, these are two balconies, and the question is can the other person's usage of your balcony create an issue or not? And if you say that there's the din of gezel, as just explained before, that the person can't steal it from you because you still own it the whole time, then why would both be forbidden? If if the person who built the shaft to draw water so he can access it, the other person can't, and then that should be it. So what's going on? So Amar Sheshet Now the issue is that when they made the shafts, they each paid in towards it. So sure, one of them happens to be hosting it, but since they both paid, therefore they both own it, and that's why it's forbidden. So that's why, because he actually has rights. If that was the case, then who cares if it's for the upper person who has the shaft to draw water, or the lower balcony? Either way, it should be the exact same case. So why are we questioning about how the upper shaft is working? Kevan de asu latachtona galui gale date de ana bahadach la nechali. So the answer is that once the lower people also made their own if each of them made their own, they're clearly stating that they didn't want to use the other one. On the other hand, if you had not, if you had not, then we still have the issue that maybe they still are being partners with this. So you're right. It doesn't necessarily mean anything different. It's just that if the lower one were to have made one in addition to the upper ones making one, then of course they wouldn't, even if they are close together, there wouldn't be an issue because clearly they had no intention of actually being partners anymore. Okay, so again, this whole thing was about this segment right here was about how to access water via the water shaft, and who's allowed to have access, and we concluding that the issue is because in the end we said that the only way that the lower person could actually forbid the upper person, it's not based on their person's ability to access the area, rather it's because he actually paid in towards the shaft to begin with. Okay. So now we've got another. Here, let me. Let's go forward another. Sorry about the page. Here we go. So now we're getting to the case of spilling water into spilling water into the courtyard. We mentioned it before. Earlier today, but now we're going to get into the case, not the case of the wastewater, but in general the general cases we have here. Okay, so here are some of the diagrams, and we're going to see how this all plays out. Chatzer shehid b'chuta me'arba amot ein shofle metoch hamayim b'Shabbat el im kein asula uka. Oh, this is the okay. Sorry. Uka machazeket beit satai min nekev ulamata. So the question is, where are we allowed to do our wastewater? How much and in what fashion? So we said if your courtyard is too small, right? It's less than 4 amot by 4 amot, then you're not supposed to spill water into it on Shabbos unless you have an area to receive water that holds asat time, but like below the water, like below the ground. So okay, ben mibachutz, ben mibifnim. So this would apply whether or not the entirety of our pit is inside or outside. Okay, so again, so this is when we've got our nice little, we did our pit in the courtyard here. Odds are it wasn't an open pit like this, because that would be dangerous and would be, and wouldn't necessarily be the odds are either way. It's still covered by a little bit, but we'll get into that in a second. All right, so again, so the point is it has to be big enough to hold enough water in order for you to be allowed to spill your wastewater into it, because nobody really wants to be. Nobody wants to wade through wastewater. I think that's a pretty fair assumption.
Sorry, just maybe I'm missing something basic, but if you have a chutzner and there's an eruv, what's the issue with bringing water into the chutzner?
So the issue is in the chutzner, it's fine. The question is if it's going outside of the chutzner.
Oh, it's going. Oh, so it's flowing. This is potentially
flow. And there's also certainly an issue of it flowing out. It has to have enough air to remain here for a little bit, and also you can't really spill it on the floor because that'd be kind of disgusting, as well as like nobody really wants to be walking through wet wastewater.
Okay. Well, that's not an error issue. That's something else, right?
That's the common decency issue. Yes. So we'll get into both those as they apply to Eruvin. We'll get more of that. So again, Elish Jimmy Bachutz, but if the main part of the pit is outside of the courtyard, Tarif Likmor, then you need to cover it up. Bifnim and Tarif Likmor. Again, so the question is, do you need to put something over it or not? So that comes down to whether or not it's in the courtyard or outside the courtyard. Inside the courtyard, you don't need to cover it, but outside the courtyard, you do need to cover it. Okay. Right. So this might not necessarily be related to the. Again, we'll get into exactly the stars behind each of the things of why we need to do it. And so again, that's depends on whether it's inside or outside, it doesn't need to be covered or not. We'll get into why in the Gemara. So Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Omer, Biv shehu kamur arba amot reshut rabim shavchilu tocha mayim b'Shabbat. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov said that if you have a drainage ditch that is 4 amot by 4 amot in the public domain, you're allowed to spill water into it on Shabbos. Afilu gag o chatzer mea ama lo yishpoch al pi habiv aval shofech ahu lagag v'mayim yordin labiv. So, okay, so Elazar ben Yaakov said that assuming that you have a biv, meaning if you have a water ditch that is covered over, then you're allowed to spill water into it on Shabbos. No, it has to be. You're not supposed to spill directly into it. You're supposed first if you're let's say in your courtyard or on your roof, you're supposed, even if no matter how big your courtyard or your roof is, you're not supposed to spill directly into it knowing that it's going to flow out. Rather, you spill it onto the roof or onto the courtyard, and then it will flow out into the sewage drain. Okay. So that's the way we say we need to do in order for it to work, right? So again, you pour it out here, and then it will go out. Similarly, if you're on the roof, you're not supposed to do it straight into the sewage drain. You're supposed to do it slightly indirectly. You spill it onto the floor, which then goes into the drain. So again, nowadays not really that much of an issue because most of our water usage is indoors, so not such a problem. Because we wouldn't necessarily be directly into that. You would only be spilling your water into a sink, and then it would go into the sink into there. So that's sufficiently indirect for our purposes. And also So we'll get it in. So here we go. Do we get to the, okay, so that was that case. Now we've got two more cases coming up in the Mishnah. Again,
Is there an issue about watering plants indirectly?
so no, as in as long as you're far enough removed from the act, we don't view that as being a problem, especially if that's not your intention. The fact, let's say that you have, let's say if you're intending to water the ground, that'd be a problem. But otherwise, let's say like, let's say you're, let's say if you're washing your hands, and let's say and you know this, and you wash your hands, let's say in the sink or on the floor, and then the floor leads to a pipe, and the pipe then leads to somewhere else, which eventually ends up reaching the ground, right? So once it's sufficiently far enough away, and that's not your intention, then you would not be chayiv on Shabbos. But if let's say you knew, let's say if you had made the setup as follows, you're very eco-conscious that all the water that you use for washing your hands is set to go directly to your garden, that would most likely be an issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because then but as an if but again, if you just happen to have there's let's say you're washing your hands. Let's say you're on your roof, you're washing your hands, and then wash it on the floor, and then it goes to the, then it goes down the drain, and then then have the runoff leads to it flows off onto your yard. But that's not what you're trying to do, so that would not be a problem because you're sufficiently far removed from the final act. Okay, so hachatzer v'hachsadra mitzarfin la'arba amot. So we say that the courtyard and the and your pergola, your portico, insert name of the nice, pretty structure. Both of them combined an area, even though for Eruvin they're considered to be a separate area for caring for one's the other one. In certain cases, for these purposes, we say they're considered to be one area, to be the 4 amot area that would allow you to spill water into that region. Similarly, if you had two floors that are next to each other, that are parallel to each other, that's these guys over here. So Biksatan asu ukats, Biksatan lo asu ukats. Sorry, uka. Right. Some of them made the sewage pit thing, and some of them did it. Et asu uka mutarin, et lo asu uka asurin. So. Right, so those who made the pit. So again, so in this case, it was again, even though everybody's in terms of for the square footage, we would say that they would consider to all be within the same thing to reach the 4 amot, but only for those who had actually gone ahead and made the sewage area would have access rights. Those who did not would not be able to. So my time up. So again, so now we're asking, what's the reason for our needing the 4 amot in order to be able to spill water in our courtyard? What's wrong with that? What are we violating? How's that going down? So I know we mentioned some of them in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, but we're gonna go to more of the Gemara. So Amarabba mipnei adam asul sapek satay mayim b'chol yom u'barba amot adam rotzeh zalfan pachot mi'arba shofan. So what's the difference that is 4 by 4 amot? You don't need a pit, whereas more than that you do. Because the answer is that Rabbi says that it comes down to basic person's water usage. So if somebody has a large courtyard, they're happy with spilling water on the floor of the courtyard. Again, we're assuming this is a courtyard that is made of that is a stone floor. If it is a different type of floor, that would be a different. Then there'd be other issues involved. So assuming this is a courtyard which is one that spilling water on would not be any other Isser on Shabbos. Just it's a question that we're saying that it will be beneficial if there's water on it, because again, that's the area is super dusty. So right, so then therefore, if it's less than 4 amot, then one would never think to try and pour water everywhere in the courtyard. But therefore, if one made a pit, you could pour it out. But if not, you can't, because otherwise, once you give the water is intended to leave the reshus directly by your spilling it out. That's a problem. If you're planning on leaving it here for now, then it's okay. And what the pit does is it means that it allows it to be here for now, even though it'll probably eventually flow out. Rabbi Zera Amar. Okay, yeah, so one reason is the question is your intent when you are, the reason for the 4 amot is because of your intent when you're spilling the water out. So Rabbi Zera gives another one, which we mentioned earlier today. Rabbi Zera Amar Arba Amot Taime, Pachomer Arba Amot Lo Taime. So Rabbi Zera said that if it's 4 amot long, then odds are that the courtyard is likely to be absorbed. But if it's less than that, the water will not be absorbed, but will instead flow out. Okay, so my benayu. So what's the difference between these two opinions? Whether or not it's based on the would you want to use it to keep dust away versus would you therefore it's beneficial to simply have spilled water on the floor versus you want it to flow out. So what's the difference? Amar Abaye arif lakatin ego benayu. So Abaye says the difference is whether or not it's if it's a long versus narrow one. If the area is 16 square amot, it's likely to absorb the water, therefore it'll be fine. But on the other hand, a very long and narrow courtyard would not necessarily need the sprinkling to keep the dust down, and therefore that would be the nafkamina. Okay, again, all this thing we're talking about now about the sprinkling of the water, etc., is assuming that by spilling of the water, we are not actually that you're not actually violating either Isser on Shabbos, because there is actually an Isser on Shabbos. If you look at the Shulchan Aruch, there is an Isser quoted on the books of what you're not allowed to sweep, and you're not allowed to sprinkle water with wine mixed in it. And the question is, when you read it, you're like, wait, since when can't we sweep on Shabbos? We always sweep our floors. And the answer is that the issue of sweeping floors is when you have a dirt floor. So similarly, so assuming that you avoid that the floors we're talking about here are, again, not, they have to have a courtyard floor that is not made out of dirt, because if it was purely made out of dirt, where it'd be beneficial for when you spill the water on it, then that would be a problem. Okay, so hopefully that answers some questions. If not, well, feel free to ask them at the end of the day. Okay, so now back to our Mishnah. So Tanan Chatzer v'Achsar Mitzvah from the Arba Amot. So it's mentioned in the Mishnah that we can combine our courtyard and our porticos. So, okay, so that was, which picture is that one? Oh, I guess I don't have a picture here. Oh, well, okay. Here, here. It's not a, here, you can see it, right? So again, the Achsar was the one that has a nice one with a cover over it. Chatzer is the one with the, simply just has walls and no roof. So now we're explaining how does that work according to his opinion. Is this beneficial? So I understand for Bizera in terms of, as you mentioned, that the area is being large enough for the water to be absorbed into the into the stones, etc., and therefore that'll be fine. But according to Rabba Kasha, according to Rabba, says that the issue is based on the size. So then why is this beneficial? So Tergama, Rabbi Zera, Aliba, Deraba, Bachsadra, Malechat, Alpnei, Kol Chatzer Kula. Rather, what is the case is that the answer is the basic, again, we said before, the issue that it's too narrow, it doesn't necessarily line up. So here we're saying is that here too, the case is where actually it ends up making it work out to be more of a square. So therefore, but when you add the porticos area, so therefore it will end up being beneficial in both directions, both in terms of the total surface area of water absorption, as well as for being an area where it would be helpful to keep the dust down. So that's how we'll solve this. That's how it's beneficial for both. Okay, so Tashma. Okay, so let's see. So coming here for this other case. So Chatzer she'ein ba arba amot al arba amot ein shov l'toch hamayim b'Shabbat. So if your courtyard is not 4x4, you can't pour water in there on Shabbos. Bishlomo l'Rabbanecha el Rabbi Zera kasha. So this works according to Rabba because again, it's similar to the case of this long and narrow. According to Rabbi Zera Kasha, but according to Rabbi Zera, if the issue is the is the total area, so then what's the difference? So meaning, and how is it different? We said above. We learn nothing new from here. So Amar Lacha Rabbi Zera would answer as follows: Ha mani Rabbanan he. The answer is that there's two different opinions. So one is according to the Chachamim, who say that the total surface area doesn't matter, whereas the other part of the mission, whereas the one we have here is solely based according to area. So that's why, again, it's not trying to teach anything about Rabbi Zera and Rabbah. Rather, it's talking about there's two different opinions, one of Chachamim and one of Rabbi Yaakov, in regards to what is the crucial point. Is it was it the water absorption, or is it the area in terms of your needing to get the dust out? So my Dulcate Rabbi Zera Lokavila Mandit and Krebel Ben Yaakov. And what is forcing Rabbi Zera to say that the Mishnah must be according to Ben Yaakov? So Amaravas Rava says as follows: Manitin Kashite. So, all right. So he says that the Mishnah is difficult. So my area the Tane Chatzer Shehid Kuta Litne Chatzer She'ein Ba Arba Amot. So this, why is he saying? Why is Rabbi Zera saying this? Is because the language of the Mishnah doesn't quite fit with his explanation perfectly. Because he says that the Mishnah says the courtyard is Kuta, meaning it's less than. But if you really wanted to get to the whole issue was it being the square the 16 by 16. It should have said litnei chatzer she'ein ba arba amot al arba amot. So seemingly, because it said less than, as opposed to saying that it's being not square, so that would imply that it's not Rabbi Zera's opinion. Rather, that's why he establishes that it's according to Rabbi Ben Yaakov. V'ha midaseifa Rabbi Ben Yaakov reisha lav Rabbi Ben Yaakov. If that's the case, then if the last part of the Mishnah is Rabbi Ben Yaakov, then that would mean that the first half of the Mishnah is not like Rabbi Ben Yaakov. No. So the answer is that's not correct. We're going to have to explain the whole Mishnah to fit with Rabbi Ben Yaakov. So Kulei Rabbi Ben Yaakov, B'chisur Machzerav Hachitani. Okay, so Rabbi Ben Yaakov, it is Rabbi Ben Yaakov, and we just need to explain a little bit more as to about the Mishnah. So Chatzer Shehi Pchuta Merba Amot Ein Shom Tocha B'Shabbat. If you have a courtyard that's less than 4 by 4, you can't spill water into it on Shabbos. Ha Arba Amot Shochin, but if it is 4 Amot, you could pour it in. Rabbi Eliezer Ben Yaakov Omer Biv HaKamur Arba Amot Rishut Rabim Shoch Chotocho Mayim B'Shabbat. Because Rabbi Yaakov says that if you have a covered sewage drain in the Rishut Rabim, that's at least 4 amot, you're allowed to spill into it, and we're not worried about the leaving of the Rishut. So Rabbi Eliezer Ben Yaakov Biv Kamur, and Rabbi Eliezer Ben Yaakov, right, is, so now we're going back to explain, we're further analyzing Rabbi Eliezer Ben Yaakov. He said that it's Biv HaKamur, right? We have the sewage, the drainage or sewage dish that's covered up. So manite, right? So, and therefore, the Chachamim would say that, because the Mishnah, the Chachamim don't agree with that, and they say that you can't, even if it is covered, you still can't pour directly in. You need to go from the roof to the drainage ditch. Okay, so now we're trying to see what else we can learn about our Mishnah. So we say manitin lo kachanya. So our Mishnah is not like Hananya. Hananya says in the Raita, Hananya Omer afilu gag me'ama lo yishpoch lefi she'en gag asu livloa el lekaleach. So the issue is that we say that's not that you can't pour onto the roof, because the roof is not going to hold the water. It's going to simply have it run off, and therefore that's a problem of you're spilling water outside, and it's going to for sure leave the tzchon. So Tana b'medvar memorim b'mot hachama b'al b'mot hakshamim shofech b'shona v'ein nimna. So we have another BAYT that says that when we're talking about that you're not allowed to they're not allowed to spill. That's during the summer, but during the winter, you can spill wherever you want. My time Amarava Adam Rosa Shivalu Mayim Koman. Because the issue is that right. So normally the difference is that during the rainy season, right? There's plenty of water, so therefore you don't really care whether the water goes or leaves because like you've got plenty of it. Whereas during the summer, you would want it there because again water is more precious and therefore you wouldn't necessarily waste it to the same degree. So Amar Le Abai. So then Abai says to Rava that's questioning Rava about that implication. It said, Hare Shofin, the Adam Rosa Shibalu, Muktani Lo Yishpoch. So, on the other hand, it's the Beit. Why are you inferring that? The Beit said that you should not end up spilling. So, what do you mean? So, Rava says back, Amarlei, Hatam Lamai Nechushla, Imishum Kilkul Chatzero, Hamakalko Vakaima. So Rava says no, it's different. Is that in general the question is about the how good will your courtyard be? And we say that either way, your courtyard is going to be the same. And if you want to say that maybe people are worried that people are going to say that so-and-so's gutter is flowing with water, which might think that they are violating some Mitzvah on Shabbos. So the answer to that is that the average drain is going to be, when it's raining, we'll probably have water flowing out of it because, well, it rained recently and that's why it's still having water come out. Okay, again, a lot of these things are, let's say the Motchav versus Mokshamim is more relevant in a Mediterranean climate where it only rains where there's a wet season and a dry season. Somewhere where that's not the case, then a lot of those distinctions would not necessarily apply. Okay. Amar Nachman. Bimod hageshamim ha'uka machazik satayim notnin lo satayim machlik sa'a notin lo sa'a. So Nachman said during the rainy season, if the sewage drain holds a certain amount, this pit meant for your stuff not necessarily connected to the stuff outside. If it can hold 2 sa'a, then you could put 2 sa'a in. If it can hold 1 sa'a, you could put 1 sa'a in. So on the other hand, in the summer, we say that if it holds 2 sa'a, we let him put 2 sa'a in, but if it only holds 1 sa'a, we don't let him pour any water in at all. So now the question is, well, why? So why not we let them do 1 each time? So Xera Dilma Ati Litain Late that time. No, because we're worried in the summer they may suddenly start putting more water into it, and that'll end up being an issue. So that during the summer also, during the winter, it should be the same issue. Like who cares about the rainy season or the dry season? It should be the same thing. So the answer is Hatam my nechush there. What's the worry there? If you're worried about your courtyard getting all wet and muddy and gross, the answer is that well, it already is because it's raining and gross because it's the winter. So and during the winter, you'd say that again. Normally, there is water flowing out, opposed to the summer, where that's not the standard. So Amar Bai Hilkach Afilu Kor Afilu Korayim, and therefore Bai says back to Rava, if that's the case, then in the rainy season there should be no limit, and there to the extent you're allowed to use this pit, and even the water flows out afterwards, because the answer is that we're not worried whatsoever, and during the rainy season. Okay. So again, so we say there's two balconies you may pour in, but again, only if you had if you'd been part of making the nice little gutter guy here, but you had not, then you can't. Then other people on the other side can't use it. So now we're going to be asking, why not? So okay. So okay, so and Amarava Afilu Eruvin. So it says that the other people on the other side can't use it, even if all sides of this of these two second story homes, right? Again, as per the diagram, even so, the ones on the left can't use the drainage pit with the people on the right. So Amar Abaye, my time. So Abaye says, why not? If you want to say the issue is that there's going to be too much water being poured into the pit. So if you want to tell me the issue is about there being too much water, so didn't we, and like by the people joining in, so we have mentioned that when you have a whether it be a pit or a cracked earthenware vessel or a pond or some sort of basin, so even though they're already full on Shabbos, you can still spill water into them on Shabbos, which would imply that we're not worried about it spilling over. So Elid Mar Hachid Mar. No, rather you should say differently. Amarava lo shanu elash lo irvu aval irvu mutarin. Therefore, Rava says as follows: no, actually, if they had an Eruv together, then there should be no issue because that means that they are all permitted to use the Eruv and they all tend to use, or therefore all able to use the same water pit for the refuse. V'chi lo irvu my time alo. And if they made an Eruv, why would they not be able to? Sorry, I think I skipped. No, right. So right. So again, it came down to if you made an Eruv or not. Again, we're on Beit So lo shanu el shel Eruv aval irvu mutarin. So again, so we said Rabbi was saying that this is all based on, again, it's mutter if you made an Eruv, but if not, then it's not. Then it's no good. So v'chi lo Eruv my time alo. If they did make an Eruv, what's the problem? So Amar Ravashi, Gzir dil ma'ati lapuke bima'ane devati mahane. So the reason why you don't let people use it if there's no Eruv isn't because of too much water. Rather, it's because we're worried that if you let them start to spill out to the other side, they might start bringing their kalim out of their houses and using their Shetar Rabim when they shouldn't be. Okay, so now let's just so Hadron Allah Kate B'Shafin. So now we have finished Parak B'Shafin, and we'll move on to the next parak. Please God, the ninth parak. Please God tomorrow. Again, just a very quick summary of what we covered today. I'll just do a pictorial one. So again, so we covered the case of the balconies, of one balcony, two balconies. We also covered the case of how to use the sewage water and how to use the public sewer drain, when it is allowed and when it isn't allowed. And we also covered the case of when we have two parallel houses on second stories, how they can or cannot use the common drain. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good day,
Have a
everybody.
good day, everybody.
Have a great day.
Take care.